Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special edition video here on the Sports Daily Media Network YouTube channel. I'm your host, Sean Vowells. I've got Mike Koomar with me. And Mike, some college basketball news broke a few days ago, and it was involving a point shaving scheme. We've got different reports of 20 charged, 26 charged. 39 players from 17 teams were in on it. In this day and age, I don't think it could be all that surprising. But what were your thoughts when you saw this happen?
Yeah, I mean, right now this all makes sense. You look at following the money in college sports and especially how much money is in sports gambling right now. It's kind of a recipe for stuff like this to happen. We've already seen it hit the NBA. The DOJ has been investigating from earlier this fall. But coming from the Department of Justice website, 26 people charged. This clearly started as an operation overseas in China. And then the organizers realized they could make a lot more money doing this inside college basketball. I think it's not as rampant as it could have been. This was clearly caught pretty early, and all of these games that um, are associated with people being charged are from the 23-24 season. A lot of these guys are even out of college right now. But then also, I think the big comment to see is there is only one school here that was a Power Five conference school, and that was DePaul, who's not a very good basketball program. Um, and that's just that it makes sense, right? You know, a lot of these big time college basketball players from these big time schools that are can determine the outcome of a game, they're making enough NIL money. They're making ends meet. They don't need to worry about point shaving. But it's these guys in these mid-major schools. You can still bet the same amount of money on them, still make a lot off of those proceeds, but they're not getting the NIL money that some of these bigger schools are. So it seems like these little schools, as it makes sense, are what these sports gambling organizers preyed upon. I'm thankful that it's not as rampant as this could have been because when I first saw the report, I thought this could have been hundreds, but only 26. It's a little bit of a trickle. Thankfully, it doesn't completely damage the integrity of our game.
And I think it. So there were some people behind it, right, that are probably the most guilty here. But certainly, like some players were in on it too. There are some clip compilations out there, and it's not obviously knowing what they were doing at the time. It doesn't look that good. I mean, there were some dribbles off their foot or coughed up easy passes out of bounds, and it was pretty clear, Mike, that they were preying on the bottom of the barrel in the sport. And as much money as in NIL, like the mid majors, they're making some cash. Probably a few thousand. Maybe the better players are getting 10 to 20, but somebody comes to them with a big opportunity. At least you can understand a little bit why they would think about doing it. But the schools are on here in the ESPN, and I was toggling back and forth between the DOJ website and the ESPN article here when you were talking, but you can see the schools there. This is, brings the whole big sports gambling conversation back into it. I think there are some people here and there that are trying to stop some things. But at the end of the day, Mike, the toothpaste is out of the tube, and it's not going to be banned. And even if it were to be banned, there'd still be some offshore and under the
Oh
table
yeah.
stuff. I think the argument can be made the fact that it is legal and very rampant is the reason why that this was uncovered. All of these companies have to adhere to government regulations, and every time there's an abnormally large wager on one of these games, they are made aware of it. So it at the end of the day, I think that's why they caught him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure exactly if this was placed on legal platforms. I'm not 100% sure. I don't know. But to your point, if they were, that would be one of the benefits to actually having, legalizing sports gambling. Personal preference, I think it is a little bit of a problem in our country. But
Definitely.
when you look at at least being able to have to disclose, oh, hey, there's a $50,000 bet placed on Eastern Michigan versus Toledo.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was the game, but just an example. That would raise some flags. And it's also clear that it seems like most of these bets were placed on over unders for like the first or second half of basketball games. They weren't placed on the entire game, but that's what's dangerous about sports gambling is how many different ways there are to bet on a single outcome of a game. There's so many different outcomes that you can make so much money off of. And that's why you're seeing issues in baseball, the NBA, and now college basketball. You're glad that we caught it when we did because you're also starting to see through this point shaving scheme, there were a lot of players, a lot of the work that was done was players talking to other players or players talking to friends. It could be on their team or on a different team to kind of work this program and get everything together. So that's how you see multiple players on one team that were doing it. You also see players that were on a team, one of them transferred and that school is how, they got involved in this point shaving scheme. So there's a lot of schools. It's important to note that, we're innocent till proven guilty in this country, and that's a great thing. But so many schools at lower levels were directly inhibited by this scandal.
And I have the Pete Thamel tweet that sort of happened here. It's a couple of like the bigger wagers and why they had red flags. $458,000 on Towson to beat North Carolina A&T. Like there is something that I learned in college when there is like a standalone game, like a noon game on a Wednesday, for example. Like we had one of those at Fairfield because the Westchester Knicks were using the stadium at night, so we had to play the game at 1 o'clock on a Wednesday, and there was like 150 to 250% more wagers on the game. So like something like that could happen, but obviously this amount on a single wager clearly got some people's attention. And at the end of the day, Mike, it's not just one thing here that caused a red flag. They have to have like communication between the people um, to be able to charge them like this. And you mentioned baseball. We had two pretty good relievers on a playoff team in the Cleveland Guardians get suspended probably for life for just saying that they would throw a ball on the first pitch. And that's
Yeah,
something that is probably not all that inconsequential. Or it's probably inconsequential to the game, but at the end of the day, like the integrity of it was gone in that moment. It appears that a number of times here, Mike, that was the case. And sometimes they didn't even do what they were supposed to do, these players. Sometimes they didn't do poorly enough to lose the bet, for example.
yeah.
So it is unfortunate. I do think that we are in a society where this probably can't be undone, but there are certain places where you know maybe like every single play, every single pitch can be bet on baseball, every single pass can be on the NFL. Like maybe we need to slow that a little bit because at the end of the day, like sports is a reality show with no script. And when that starts to not be the case, I think people would lose interest. But obviously, the game is this has happened on a very small scale. I think we're glad that it got caught in the moment, but maybe some bigger things are coming.
Absolutely. And I think this also, plays into the fact we, lamented a little bit about this earlier on in the season, where kind of the purity of college sports is certainly gone.
Yeah,
And you're shocked that I personally still think it's shocking that you're able to bet on, I guess they're not really amateur athletes anymore, but still you're betting on 18 to 22-year-old college students at the end of the day.
and
Um,
until very recently, in some states, you could even get an alcoholic beverage at a college event.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
But and there are some schools you still can't do that.
yeah,
So, where is the line here? And how do you draw it in terms of gambling here, especially at the college level? Look, sports gambling has completely taken over the sports scene in our society here. How do we make sure that stuff like this doesn't continue to happen? Because now we've talked about how three of the more major sports in our country have been involved in this. Who
and it's
knows if the federal government or the state will start to take states will start to take certain regulations to protect the integrity of sport within their specific state. Um, and who knows, maybe more regulation is good. You don't know. Maybe there will be less betting, but then you also have to be concerned about, what I can call quote unquote black market betting.
Yeah.
where things are taken more to the side. Now, you're probably not going to have black market betting on, is Buffalo going to, Buffalo +8 in the first half.
Yeah.
That's probably not a black market bet that's going to happen. But at this day and age, it seems like, gambling is just so much easier, and is permeating our society within athletes and coaches, even trying to get involved in point schemes.
And they, from the league's point of view, whether it's the NCAA or the NFL or the NBA, their TV ratings are at an all-time high. Um, I if wagering were to stop, that would go down, and that would cost millions and millions of dollars to those in charge. So I don't know if they're going to be pushing for it very hard. You do have the whole problem in college sports specifically, Mike, that there's not really a governing body that can make decisions, and
Yeah.
until very recently they hadn't really stuck their foot in the sand on anything, and then they started to have soon with the transfer portal and eligibility and all that. But like maybe just somebody in charge of each college sport. Like I know
Yeah.
college football people have been asking for a commissioner for probably about a decade now, but that and this isn't just when it comes to sports gambling, but in general, we do a lot of college sports stuff here on this YouTube channel, whether it's basketball or football, and it has hit basketball. Now, I think it was very some of these clips were very obvious when you look at them back, but at the end of the day there is really nothing stopping somebody from doing this. Somebody who makes, let's say, 10,000 in NIL per year gets approached to throw the first half of a game for $50,000. Like there is nothing stopping them from doing that other than saying no. And
And you look at some of these schools. Look, Alabama State, you're not making NIL money playing at Alabama State. Alabama State has a tiny endowment. They don't really have, any money for any sports program, much less basketball. I'd argue it's probably the same for University of New Orleans, which we had multiple players from University of New Orleans. Kennesaw State, they have a tiny endowment. They're probably not paying their players much, if anything. Maybe they're getting $1,000, maybe. But you look at some of these smaller schools, and to be honest, some of them are making absolutely nothing.
yeah,
And that's a big problem, and something that needs to be addressed. I think really if there's ever going to be regulation on this, because the NCAA has clearly proven to be a completely ineffective organization. Change is going to happen through the legislative process within certain states. I don't think the federal government is going to be taking any big steps anytime soon. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But right now, I think it would have to come down to the individual states. And to that point, I don't think certain states want to penalize their state schools or their state's professional sports organizations, um, and potentially lead to less viewership for those sports. So that's what it have to come down to. It would have to be a little bit of a sacrifice, but that's probably the only way that we see any progress, at least right now as it stands.
and this isn't the only time that this has happened in college basketball too. Now there have been, this is sort of the big, report, like when 14 players got named with steroids in baseball. There have been some other one-offs here and there, like players leaving the program for personal reasons, and like this is that. I know off the top of my head 4 or 5 times that somebody has left the team because of this, and it wasn't public information that it was because of this, but this was sort of the big one that got our attention and why we're doing a special episode here, because these things do kind of come out of nowhere. Mike, we didn't really have any idea that this was coming, and then I think almost all, and maybe even all of them, are not in college basketball anymore. Or there's been a few. The one on
Yeah.
Kennesaw State got dismissed from the, or suspended indefinitely from the team, but it is unfortunate. But I do think at the same time, Mike, that it could be worse.
It could. And kudos to the Department of Justice for getting this uncovered, and indictments unsealed as soon as possible. Because, it does seem like it had been slowed down to a trickle. And, who knows? Maybe there's a lot of stuff going on this year, or the year before that they've missed. But at the end of the day, it could be so much worse. It really could. It has not permeated all the levels of Division I college basketball. It never got into college football that we know of. So yeah, no, this is big for us.
And
Another player, I know that's the only one that I really know of significance that's suspended right now, or not playing, is Elijah Gray, who's a Wisconsin player, was indicted in this, and he is currently sitting on the sidelines. Former Fordham player when he was involved in the point shaving scheme. So, but that was 2 seasons ago. I think all of this really ended at the end of the 23-24 season. So this really seemed to be a one season wonder. And hopefully this doesn't happen again.
I do want to say that to differentiate like point shaving and sacrificing the integrity of the game, which clearly happened here, and then some other people like Jamichael Davis from Rutgers who was suspended for almost a year. He just like the rules of college sports are you cannot wager on your sport or any other sports that involve like your school. And I think there's some transfer stuff there, and he ended up. That is not this. That is against the rules, and he should be punished for that. But that is not
Yeah.
sacrificing the integrity of the game. And it's been made very clear to these players over the years, Mike, when they step on campus day one, what is expected of them, what they have to sign. I'm sure some NIL payments might be tied into maybe forfeiting some of that if you get caught doing this in the future. And um, and then there's the whole other side of it, which is just inside information, insider trading, if you will, which is
Mhm.
still illegal, but I don't know if that's happening all too much in this day and age with social media where information is like very readily available. Um, so there's a few different types of gambling things that you can get in trouble for. The other ones are obviously not good, but I don't think there's anything crazy to be mad about there. But in terms of point shaving, that is the integrity of the game is gone, and whatever
Yeah.
happens to that player, you have to scrutinize it. So it's an
Yeah.
interesting place we are here in college sports, but we thought we'd just hop on and talk about this and see where we go from here. So, Mike, I think we'll end it there unless you got some final thoughts.
No, that's all I got.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.